welcome back to another bold, raw, and real episode of Mind Over Masculinity, the podcast where we dismantle myths, challenge the conditioning, and rewrite the rule book on what it means to be a man today. Yeah, and I'm your host Avik, and today we are diving into a conversation that's not often heard out loud, but especially among men, the shame, secrecy, and struggle behind binge eating. Yes. Yes, men binge too. Yeah. and it's not just about willpower, right? So our guest today is Amber Abila. So welcome to the show, Amber.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to chat today.
Amazing, amazing. So, Amber, before we start, I'll quickly love to introduce you to all the listeners. Dear listeners, Amber is a powerhouse coach who's on a mission to help people feel normal and in control around the food. So, without relying on restrictive diets or shame based solutions. So, she cracked the code on her own cycle of binge eating, not by uh, trying harder, but by rewiring her brain and reclaiming her worth. So, dear listeners, if you have ever found yourself eating in secret, losing control around food after a tough day, or feeling like your body is uh, something to battle rather than honor, then this episode is going to hit home. And why to wait? Let's get started. Welcome to the show again.
Thank you.
Amazing. So, Amber, I mean, you have talked about how on the outside everything looked perfect, but inside you felt addicted to the food. So, if you can walk us through, what those dual identities feel like the high functioning achiever and the person secretly battling food addiction. So, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So my journey started when, like I mentioned, my life seemed to be all together in other ways. I had a great job. I was going to a top school. I had great friendships and a family that loved me. And so from the outside, it would look like that she's got everything going for her. And I think a lot of people have this experience where I'm sure, in this podcast, we're talking about, oh, I'm a woman, but we're talking about how men need to keep it together a lot of the times too. And we often have this external perception of how we're perceived. But how I started binge eating was after a period of dieting, which is how binge eating starts for most people.
Yeah.
We cut back on our calories, or we do keto, or we try no sugar. We do something to introduce some sort of form of restriction in our life. And when this happens, our
Mm.
brain responds by trying to protect us and make sure we are alive by getting enough food, and it starts sending out really strong urges to eat. And so these strong urges to eat, most of us do not know how to handle. We don't know what they are. And so we act on them. And every time we act on these strong urges to eat, it reinforces this habit pathway and makes it more ingrained in our brain. So that over time, the more and more that we restrict and then we binge, and then this habit pathway gets reinforced, the more we're going to want to binge, even if we stop restricting, even if we stop dieting. And so this is what happened to me, where I kept binge eating more and more, and I thought I just had to try harder. I thought after my first binge it was on 7 cookies at Christmas time, and
Yeah.
I thought, okay, this was a one-time thing. I'm going to get it together after this, no worries. But it kept happening over and over, and I thought I just wasn't being strong enough. I thought if I just tried harder, it would be all figured out. But I didn't understand that that's not how our habit brain works, and that willpower is not an effective solution. So, again, from the outside, it looked like everything was perfect, but I didn't tell anyone about the secret struggle where I was sneaking food, where I was binge eating at night, where I'd go out and I'd order the salad, but then I'd stop by and get a whole bunch of ice cream on the way home and binge it really quickly, where I'd hide wrappers. And so it really was a lot of shame for me around the binge eating, where I didn't want anyone to know about, like, the secret struggle that I had.
Mm. Understood. But- And that's really the perfect one you mentioned. So, how do you finally connect those dots, like between binge eating and your brain's wiring, instead of just blaming yourself?
Mhm. So, the reason why willpower doesn't work is because willpower is essentially just telling ourselves no or don't do it. And if you've ever told a child or someone who's really adamant about something, no, you'll know what tends to happen is a tantrum or backlash. People
Mm,
want what they want. And so the same thing happens in our brain when where we try to tell ourselves, just don't binge, just don't eat more. Our brain backlashes and says, oh no, let me show you. And it will rebel and will eat even more. And so that's not an effective strategy. But what is instead is learning how to change our thoughts around food. So,
yeah.
right now, when your brain's in a strong habit, it starts to think that it needs to binge in order to survive. Now, we know logically we don't need thousands and thousands of calories extra a day in order to survive, but to our unconscious brain, that's what it's learned. So, what we need to do is we need to start to show our brain all of the ways that it doesn't actually need all of this food and all the way that our thoughts around food are actually not true. So, what's this look in practicality is one, we need to show our brain the true pain of binge eating. A lot of times when we go into eating food, I call it telling ourselves chapter one of the story. Chapter one, we eat the food, it tastes delicious, the end. But we need to tell ourselves chapter 2 through 10 of what happens after that, which is okay, chapter 1, we eat the food, maybe it tastes good for a little bit. But then we
Mm,
start eating more frantically, and then we feel out of control, and then the guilt washes over us, and then the screw it eating happens where we just say, "We'll start over again tomorrow. Let me just finish eating right now." And then we're surrounded by the wrappers with a full stomach that just feels horrible and we can't sleep that night. That is all the aftermath that we want to show our brain is the truth of what happens, that it doesn't feel good, that it isn't fun to binge, that it's not something that's truly what we want to do, and these thoughts are only coming up like a record player going round and round on autopilot. They don't actually mean anything about what we truly want or what we truly need.
man. Got it. Right. I mean, that really resonates because I think so many of us, especially men, mask the emotional chaos with productivity. And as always, like we are taught to man up, but no one ever says how. So yeah. So many men I talk to and I speak, I feel like their eating habits spiral at night after the stressful day, right? So uh, why is this is that stress or fatigue or you can say the emotion often triggered binge episodes? Like what actually happening in our brain?
Mhm. Yeah, so a couple things that we wanna look at. The first is if there's any restriction. So if you're anyway, trying to diet or be, like, extra good during the day, then sometimes the nighttime can turn in this time to be bad and rebel and get it all in before we start good tomorrow. So I would first check to see if there's any of that going on, but if there's not and you feel like, "No, I'm feeling myself throughout the day, I feel good," it's really just coming from this other way of emotion or a habit. The main thing I would see with stress eating at night is that people do not allow themselves the ability to sit with their emotions. And what this means is if you are, stress is an overarching term. I don't really think of stress as an emotion because stress usually has something underneath it. Either there's fear, there's anxiety, there's shame, there's overwhelm. Um, there's, all the other emotions a little bit more specific than just stress. Like, what does that even mean? So that's a first step is getting really clear on, well, what does it really mean if I'm stressed? Like, what emotion am I feeling? But most people have zero awareness of what emotions are or how to sit with them. They just feel something and they just take action from it. They don't take a second to pause, they don't take a second to breathe in it. And that's what we want to start building our skills around is creating space between this emotion and the action. A lot of people will tell me of how quickly it just happens. And I used to feel this way too, where I would think about food and the next thing you know, I was in the cabinets and I was already eating. So we want to start to create some space where when you get home and you notice you're stressed, which by the way, if you've, overeaten or binge like every single night for the past 5 years, you just want to expect that your brain is going to suggest that tonight because that's how our habitual brain runs. So we
Okay.
start to expect that these things are going to come up so we can prepare for them. And then once you get to the end of your day, you know you're probably going to feel some sort of stress, you're going to feel some sort of emotion underneath. We want to take a minute to pause and really ask ourselves, what is this emotion and why is it here? What is it here to tell me? If I feel really overwhelmed, is it because I feel unsupported at work? Is it because I don't know what's going on in the household? Whatever it is, getting really clear about that can let you know, well, what is this emotion trying to tell me? And that helps us start to become friends with our emotions. When we eat, we drink, we scroll, we do any of these things to avoid our emotions, we're creating like this battle between us and our emotions where we're trying to escape them. We don't want them to be there. And the more we try to do that, the worse the emotions actually get. So instead, we want to begin becoming friends with our emotions and looking at them as something that's there to tell us something, to communicate them. I like to think about it as sitting down and having tea with your emotions. So if you were to have tea with your emotions, what would they tell you? What do they have to offer you? And that will help to start to connect us to what we really need instead. Because if we're not hungry, then food is not the answer. The only thing food can solve for us is hunger. So we need to find something else then that can either help give us what we need or just learn how to sit with the discomfort of sometimes feeling negative emotions in life.
Ah, okay. Truly agree on this, definitely. And also quickly to check, like, can those patterns be reversed without going, or I mean, all in or on strict diets?
Absolutely. And in fact, strict diets will only make it worse because a strict diet to our brain, it perceives that as a threat to our survival. And so when our brain has that threat to survival, what it does is it hyper focuses on it, meaning we become obsessed around food. We think about food all day. We want to eat more food just in case it all goes away. So dieting is historically really ineffective. There's a statistic that 95% of dieters who lose weight will gain it all back or even more. Very
Oh,
often, it's more than when they start. So if someone told you, "Hey, do you wanna lose weight with a tool that you're 95% likely to gain it all back?" You would be like, "Absolutely not. That sounds like a horrible idea." So yes, we need to focus more on our mindset around food and our thoughts around food and really getting to the root cause of it, of why we're wanting to eat so much food in the first place instead of just going to a Band-Aid fix like a diet.
uh, true, exactly. Ah, I mean, it's really powerful to hear that food struggles aren't the moral failings, but they are the patterns, and patterns can be rewired. So that gives people hope. Definitely. Thank you so much for sharing this. And also, like, uh, if we talk about the masculinity for a second, like in male circles, food control is often seen as a discipline, like a badge of honor. So, but what's the danger in equating food restrictions with strength and uh, I mean binging with weakness? Like, if you can share.
Yeah. So I first want to share a couple statistics that I pulled for today's episode, which is first, 40% of people with binge eating disorder are male. So a lot of times people think that, eating disorders are a woman issue, and they're really not. That almost half of people binge eating are men. And that also, 33% of males have used unhealthy behaviors as an attempt to alter their weight. Okay, so there's so many people who are trying to alter their weight, either lose weight or gain weight or do this control that you're mentioning to show over it, but they're doing it in an unhealthy way. And so the downside of that is, all of the secret eating that can happen and shame, which can lead to even more decline in mental health. It can lead to even more weight gain, more hiding, more secrecy. It can lead to a lot of disconnection with our family, our friends, our work because we're so in our head about what we're eating. So it can manifest itself in a lot of different ways. And I think, both sides can be true for men where um it can be looked at as a source of like power and control to be in control of food, but I also think on the other side that it's a little bit more normalized for men to binge eat in the sense that it's more normal for men to eat a lot of food, and you might have been told as a child, "Oh, you need to beef up," or "You need to eat more, you need to be a strong man," and so it can get into this really messy territory where people don't wanna seem like a bad man because they're not finishing all their food, or they're not eating all their steak on their plate so they can build their muscles, and so that can kind of contribute to, binge eating kind of getting pushed under the rug and hidden under the surface and harder to admit it's a problem because there's a lot of men who are wanting to bulk up and to gain weight, and they might say, "Oh, I wish I could gain weight. I wish I could eat as much food as you." But the person could be secretly struggling a lot with the consequences of binge eating and feeling really bad in their body and dealing with a lot of health consequences from it.
Exactly. I agree. I agree. And like so you have worked with a lot of people struggling with shame as well. So why you think, I mean, why is shame such a key player in the binge eating cycle? Like, how can men begin releasing it that without shutting down or maybe numbing out?
Mhm. So I think of shame as like this bubble that goes over us. And when we have a shame bubble on us, we can't see our way out very well. It's very cloudy and dark, and we have a hard time seeing what's actually going on because we're really down on ourselves. We start to feel really hopeless. We start to feel like there's something incredibly wrong with us. And I want to offer that if you're struggling with binge eating, there is nothing wrong with you. All you are doing is eating food. Like, no one here is killing puppies or, stealing candy from kids. We're just
Yeah.
eating food, and that's okay. It might be more food than your body needs, but there's nothing inherently wrong with you as a human. And it actually, if you're struggling with binge eating, actually means there's a lot right with you because it's your brain trying to protect you from starvation. It's your brain trying to protect you from feeling something negative. So it's trying to help you in some way and it's trying to form a strong habit around something it thinks you need. It's just kind of doing it in a wrong way. But nothing's wrong with our brain during that. It's just doing something we don't necessarily want it to do. So just reminding yourself that there's nothing wrong with you for eating a lot of food and that the more we hide in shame, the less likely we are to get out of it because what kills shame is curiosity. If we can sit down and get curious about our habits and what might actually be going on, that's going to allow us to gain new insights, new understandings, to learn from our slip ups in a way that we've never have before. And that's what's going to allow us to learn and grow, just like any other skill in life where we get curious and actually build this new skill of how to become a normal, natural eater again.
Mhm. Very true. Yeah. And also, like, if you can share, like, how can someone start building that self trust again, um, if they have broken promises to themselves around food over and over?
Yeah. Every single time we say we'll do something and then we do it,
Yes.
we build that self trust. The self trust comes back and it does take time. And what's important is not to make your goals too big. So if you tell yourself, I'm done overeating and binge eating forever and that's what I'm going to do, it's going to be too big of a goal right now. So you want to start small. That might look like saying, I'm going to practice checking in with my hunger signals before lunch today and seeing if I'm actually hungry for lunch or if maybe I'd be okay for another 30 minutes. Then, when you do that, that builds that trust. Or you're going to
Yeah.
say, you know what, I'm going to practice leaving behind 2 crumbs of food on my plate tonight instead of cleaning it to completely a clean plate. And then if you do that, you're gonna say, "Woohoo, go me, I did it." And that starts to build this self-trust that you can do what you wanna do. But making it small enough so it's actually realistic, versus some crazy big goal is what's gonna help you start to actually build that momentum with it.
Understood. Understood. Lovely. Uh, Thanks for sharing this. And so before we wrap, like, what's the one myth about binge eating that you wish more men understood? And how would dismantling the that belief change their mental health? So what do you have to say?
Mhm.
Hmm.
Such a good question. I think, it kinda goes back to what I mentioned earlier that if you're binge eating, this idea that all you need is willpower and you just need to try harder, when that cannot be further from the truth. It's not a try harder thing. It's not a let's hold my hands tight and hope we get through tonight. There are so many skills and tools out there that
Mm.
help you manage your emotions better, that help you become someone who has the skills, who can eat when they're hungry and stop when they're full and eat in moderation. But these are not skills we're taught in school. They're not things
Mm.
that we know how to do. And so there's nothing wrong that you don't know how to do them yet. It's just that we don't live in a society that often values those things. We value hard work and keeping it together and just doing more and more and more. But that's you're like pushing yourself uphill. It's really hard to do when we start to work with our brain versus against our brain, everything becomes easier. So when we start to look at these underlying thoughts around, oh, I have to clean my plate because that's what I was told as a kid is what I need to do. Oh, I need to eat all this steak so I can look masculine and I don't want to stop even though I'm really full right now. Oh, I can't admit that I'm struggling with binge eating because that makes me look weak. When we start to look at all these thoughts and we question, are these thoughts actually true? We'll start to dismantle all of these beliefs in our brain, and that will help us actually stop binge eating because then we literally rewire our brain. Every single time we shift our thoughts or we shift our actions, we are changing our brain differently. We are creating new neural pathways, and that's what will
Mm.
help us be able to change these habits permanently versus just white knuckling our way through it and not actually changing any of these underlying core beliefs that we have around food.
Exactly. Exactly. Wow. Lovely. So, Amber, I mean, thank you so much for showing up with honesty, insight, and a whole lot of heart. Like, what you are doing is more than coaching, and it's a revolution. And for everyone who is listening, if you have been ever struggled with the food, body image, or shame, then this conversation was your permission slip to put down the armor and pick up the compassion. And remember this, man, like your relationship with the food is a reflection of your relationship with yourself. So it's definitely the time that we stop numbing and start nourishing. So, Amber, like if someone wants to connect with you and have a discussion, how they can connect?
So the first thing I'd recommend is downloading my free guided audio to stop a binge. This is a 7-minute audio that I wish I had so desperately in my journey, and it's going to walk you through what to do when you get these strong urges. So that would be the first place to start, and that will also get you on my email list where you can find out more about my coaching. If you want to learn more about working with me one on one, I have a 6-month program called the Confident Eater Program that you can learn more about at theconfidenteater.org.
Perfect. Perfect. That's lovely. So, dear listeners, I'll put all the links into the show notes for your easy reference. And with this hope, until next time, this is your host, Avik, signing off from Mind Over Masculinity. Till then, stay strong, stay soft, and stay human. Thank you so much.